Have you guys ever wondered how to take your music listening to kind of like the next level? Generally speaking, if you want to get stronger, you're going to lift weights. If you want to learn, you study. It's pretty cut and dry when you think about it. So what do you do when you want to enhance your listening? Obviously buy directional RCA cables, right? Yeah, probably not. What if I told you there was 3 simple but kind of terrible ways you can go about this? I'm going to give these a try so that maybe you guys don't have to. You don't have to run mile repeats or study for hours to accomplish any of these, but in some ways, what we're gonna do today might be a little worse. And since I'm a nice guy, I'm gonna throw in 3 easy ones that'll also greatly improve your listening, but won't make your life miserable. And not only are these ones easy, they're actually really interesting too. Let's get to it. Terrible option number 1. Yeah, you simply need to stop sleeping. So yes, sleep deprivation. And before you jump to any conclusions here, I'm not asking you to give up sleeping for 48 hours before your next Diana Kroll binge. Sleep deprivation occurs at any point you're not receiving enough for your particular needs. If this is true, I feel like every parent with young kids may have the golden ears that a lot of the reviewers in this space claim to have. Yes, please tell me more about how the last 100 things you reviewed have seemingly been better than the last. It's almost like magic. When you're sleep deprived, the prefrontal cortex, which handles executive function and filtering, does become less active. This reduced filtering can make music feel more dreamlike and emotionally powerful. Some people even claim to feel enhanced perception of bass frequencies, more vivid sound stages, and emotional responses to the familiar songs. Even discovery of subtle details that they never noticed before. To take advantage of this one without being a total lunatic, let's try it with mild or moderate tiredness. Think just staying up a little later than normal or ending your night listening to music, rather than attempting this in sort of a caffeine-fueled psychosis. To me, this logic does make a bit of sense and why so many people like to relax and listen to music at the end of the day. A quick warning from my non-existent lawyer. Keep in mind, actual sleep deprivation is terrible for your heart, immune system, and mental health. The last thing you want to do is start thinking your houseplants are gossiping about you. Again. It's also tied to conditions such as high blood pressure, vascular diseases, and like I said earlier, flippin' psychosis. So get your damn sleep. And if you could, please subscribe down below. This might not help your sleep, but it's certainly gonna help mine. So I ended up testing this one about 3 hours beyond when I would normally go to bed. And here's kind of what happened. First of all, I've got to say that it doesn't surprise me that, I sort of enjoyed listening to music like this. When I'm exhausted, I'm not exactly looking to go for a run or do things around the house. Hanging out is pretty much all I want to do at that point. What I can see here that backs this one is that, when you're really tired, either late nights or early mornings, I find that loud sounds are just a little bit more irritable. The little things that I would have easily been able to brush off during the day when well rested just tend to eat at me a little bit more. Something definitely is heightened in this state, which makes me believe some of this could carry an impact during listening sessions. I would have to say this definitely also impacted what I was listening to as far as my music tastes go. I'm gravitating to lighter genres, laid-back tracks without heavy bass notes, and certainly avoiding anything screaming. I'm gonna rate this one a 6 out of 10 because yes, I do feel impacted by the experience, but at the same time, I think a person can get into this mental state without the whole deprivation and sacrificing your health type of thing. And for the next terrible option, balance. Picture this, you're standing on one leg like a martial arts master, perfectly balanced, experiencing the ultimate listening session. Why? Because your vestibular system and your auditory system are apparently best friends who like to help each other out. As strange as this one sounds, there's a direct connection between balance and the auditory perception. The balance and auditory systems are closely interconnected in the brain, so when you stand on one leg, your vestibular system becomes highly engaged, which can in return enhance auditory sensory processing, including your hearing. I'd imagine if you stand long enough, you might even hear yourself fall down. Let's call the first attempt the flamingo method. Attempt to listen to one full song, listening on one leg. Well, the results are in and I made it 2 songs. I guess we can all stop going to the gym or running. We just need to listen to a few songs a night, and I think all of us are gonna be ready to hit the bodybuilding stage come next year. I'm really not looking forward to seeing that lineup. The scientific evidence behind this one isn't really that great, but I can see where they're going with it. It's a similar claim that they make with those exercise ball office chairs. The constant engagement of balance is supposed to keep you a bit more alert and in a receptive state. I feel like falling down every 2 minutes might be a bit distracting in the long run, but what do I know? If you want to experiment with this one for yourself, rather than holding a pistol squat, maybe just sit on an exercise ball and try not to fall over. You know, when I knew I was going to be ranking these, I had a strong feeling that this one was going to be my least favorite. I tried standing on one leg on the floor, holding an obnoxious pistol squat, and simply sitting on this ball. Standing on one leg is doable and actually something you should be able to do as you continue to age, but obviously not for long listening sessions. Holding the pistol, I wasn't able to make it through an entire song, and finally sitting on the ball is fine, it just isn't that comfortable and doesn't even have a drink holder. Am I supposed to, balance the coffee cup on my head or what? And with that, this one gets a 2 of 10. While I certainly did have a heightened sense of alertness, I found the concentration of standing on one leg is exactly where that concentration went. If anything, I found myself less focused on the music. Terrible option number 3. One left before we get into the easy wins. And it's, well, freeze yourself out. Depending on your definition of cold, this one might be the least terrible. I live in North Dakota and it's been as low as -22 this week, so borderline freezing might actually seem tropical at this point. I already consider myself, one with a cold at this point, so this challenge might actually work out for me. The basics of this one is listening in colder temperatures may enhance hearing by causing discomfort. Sounds wonderful, right? Well, that's the main point, but there's a lot more to it and more complicated things than that. To start it off, colder temperatures could keep you from getting too relaxed and losing focus. Basically, you're going to be a little bit more alert. Sounds as fantastically terrible as the last two. Nothing screams musical enjoyment like avoiding relaxation at all costs. But it does get better here. A more interesting point about cold temps is air density and sound wave propagation. Colder air is denser than warm air. This cold air allows for sound waves to travel more efficiently through it. A warmer temp allows for a faster transmission, but colder allows for better sound waves. I can only imagine how indistinguishable these are, but I'm sure there's a reviewer online proclaiming it if you guys want to look hard enough. The thought behind it is, though, the denser, colder air provides more molecules per volume for sound waves to interact with, potentially leading to clearer sound. Even wilder and possibly more far-fetched, but maybe less so than speaker cables increasing your highs or lows, is that humidity levels can possibly tune sounds to some extent. Water vapor is less dense than air molecules, so high humidity reduces overall air density, affecting sound waves in some strange ways. Allegedly, higher humidity is better at conducting higher frequencies, and very dry air will tend to absorb some of the low frequencies. So I guess we've all been fooled here. We thought we needed DSP or magic speaker cables, but in the end, all we actually needed was a humidifier, dehumidifier, apparently. I better start branding some HiFi humidifiers and selling them on Amazon before anyone else gets the jump on me. My final point on temperatures and its effects on the ear itself: your inner ear maintains or attempts to maintain a specific temperature for optimal function. Temperatures that swing one direction or the other can have some impact on the viscosity of the inner ear fluids. As cooling tends to reduce inflammation, this could possibly, but very unlikely, contribute to minuscule changes in how you perceive sound. I wasn't worried about testing this one. My sources were only citing around 65 degrees, which is nothing this time of year. I did have to bring in a humidifier to bump up the levels though, because it's extremely dry in the winter with the furnace running nonstop. I did end up taking this a step further and dropped the temperature down to around 60 degrees, which is a touch uncomfortable, but not to the point of shivering. And from what I read, going too far on the temperature scale could be detrimental to this test, but I think that likely does depend on the person's tolerances. Obviously, if you're suffering from frostbite, you're not going to be overly concerned with picking up new details that you previously missed. I don't know. I didn't really mind this one. I can't say it magically opened up my ears, nor can I say it didn't. It was simply a bit cold and in some ways a bit lonely. Now, if this scenario had a fireplace going, a hot coffee, and some blankets, I could do this all day. But as is, this one gets a 6. The music still sounded great, obviously, but it's just as I sold it, kind of another terrible way to possibly improve your sound. Finally, let's get to 3 options that don't involve never sleeping again, circus acts, or listening in a freezer. This is a good one. Negative space listening, which is appreciating the notes in between the notes. A visual description for this one would be, picture in your head the Mona Lisa or any famous portrait that you're familiar with. The notes are the subject of the painting that we tend to focus on. You can likely picture in your head right now exactly what he or she looks like. The negative space we're going to key in on is actually the background that sets the scene but is often overlooked and underappreciated. This is sort of a fun one and really easy to play around with. First, I'm going to ask you to cue up the song Music for Airports by Brian Eno. It's not my taste in music, generally speaking, but it makes this exercise really easy because of the clear intentional spaces between the notes. The thought here is to key in on when the notes end, rather than the general thought of when they begin. Even further, attempt to really key in on one single instrument, like a piano, and take notice of when it drops out and what takes its place. Pay attention to these windows and allow almost a tension to build within these gaps. Really try to observe how these spaces contribute to what they're trying to convey in the song and see where that takes you. The first example likely isn't to your musical tastes, but this style of delivery is used by many artists today to convey emotion in songs. It's something to look for during your regular listening playlists and see if you can key in on some of these subtle nuances that exist within the music. As for my easy win number 2, Blackout. A blacked out space, which you've likely heard before, but maybe not the why it's possibly so effective. There's a lot of fascinating neurological and psychological mechanisms involved here. The brain only has so many resources that it can divide amongst your senses. When you eliminate the visual input, more neural resources become available for processing. This concept is called cross-modal neural competition. The easiest way to think about it is all of your senses compete for bandwidth, and visuals are obviously quite demanding. To take things a step further, research has shown that temporary visual deprivation leads to enhanced activity in the auditory cortex. There's some sort of compensation occurring that can temporarily make you more sensitive to sound. This totally does make sense. Imagine walking around your house in the middle of the night, maybe you're trying not to wake anyone up while you sneak a bite to eat. You drop the spoon, and it might as well sound like a cannon went off in your head when it hits the floor. Another that I can think of is, say you're walking around the woods at night where your senses are already pretty heightened. The slightest noise or rustling of leaves will immediately get your attention. How long does this overcompensation last though? I really couldn't tell you. A strange thing also happens when you turn out the lights. Without the normal visual cues it's accustomed to, your brain will rely more heavily on audio cues for spatial processing. And this is why you might feel like your soundstage width and depth has increased, as well as your ability to place instruments in space. So while some of these may be your mind playing tricks on you, at the end of the day, you hear what you hear, and that's really all that matters. When testing this one, let's not combine methods such as standing on one leg in the dark, and if you do, don't send your ambulance chasing lawyer after me. Last one, bonus tip number 3. That one just says relax. Simply find yourself a comfortable position, no bed of nails or igloo furniture. Keep your eyes open or closed, I'm not picky. Clear your mind of distractions. Those taxes can wait. Now just focus on the music and enjoy it. Sometimes it's really just that easy. While some of these methods were a bit wild and possibly unrealistic, it's still interesting learning the science behind why we hear things and how that impacts the way we do perceive music. And now that I have your hearing performance on point, check out my video on the direction of this hobby. See if there's still going to be something to listen to in the future anyways. And if you could, please consider subscribing as well. I have a lot of big things planned this year, and with your help, I should be able to put out some really good content. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.